Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by reboots, remakes, comic book movies, and sequels to reboots, remakes, and comic book movies. Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Sugar Papa, connecting needy people all over New York City. Download the Sugar Papa app now in Android or iPhone or whatever. So big fail. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And this is the podcast where we like to analyze films, break them apart, see what they're made of. Today's another weird one for me where I'm doing this on the road. I'm in a little stop in Tucson. And so I am recording without a microphone for the first time, maybe ever. And so I'm a little nervous. So if this sounds worse than normal, that's why. And actually, someone posted something really cool last week. Speaking of what we sound like, Alex posted, tagged us in a post and said that she listens to us a lot while like drawing and creating, which I found amazing because my baseline assumption of when people program us into their day was like, as they go to sleep, they were like audio ambient as they listen to the tedium of my notes every week. And so that was really cool, actually. I appreciate the tag and the mention, Alex. And I'm always curious. So if you want to let us know where you listen or if there's a particular way you like to listen to our show, then that would be pretty cool to hear about. I've asked you this before, but when are you doing most of your podcast listening?
Me?
Yeah.
In the car. Usually. Yeah, I don't really have time to like sit around and listen to podcasts at home, with the kids and everything. So yeah, it's either in the car or usually that's it. Just because any other time I don't really have time here. But and then when I'm in the gym, I usually, listen to music, screamo, the typical. No, just kidding. Screamo. What about you?
Yeah, my morning routine is usually like as I'm cleaning my face and brushing my teeth, my one tooth. I'm listening to it. And then as I'm cooking breakfast, I have like things that people have given me over the years, like products. I shot a product video with you actually of that little retro rocket radio that has a Bluetooth connection. Like I put that in my kitchen because the client gave it to me afterwards and they were like, we can't sell that. It's been opened. And so you just hold on to that. Yeah. And so I put that in my kitchen. And so I'm like popping around the house on Bluetooth connections. And so then actually in the gym, if I don't have a workout partner, I'm just podcasting. Like,
really? You don't listen to music?
It depends on the set. If it's like a heavy set, not quite, definitely on a 1 rep max, but even if I'm getting into like 85-90% of my max, then I might throw on something serious. And it's like, okay, I need, whatever, Waka Flocka. No, I don't listen to Waka Flocka.
You listen to Waka Flocka too? Man, Desert Island album right there. Fozzie Bear is the best.
So I most times if I'm in the car, anytime, it's the rarity is when do I actually listen to music? And that's few and far between lately. But I was driving down the PCH during my countryside tour of America. And I realized about an hour into the PCH, I was like, what am I doing? I'm listening to a podcast? No. So I started like cycling through some of my favorite albums. Like obviously everyone I think knows at this point, I'm a big Maggie Rogers fan. So she got some play. I think I had some Portishead that I listened to, and Tony Rich Project. I actually really loved the Tony Rich Project, and so I was listening to him. I think he's excellent. Yeah, and so that was
listen to some Sublime here in California.
True.
On PCH.
The one thing I didn't actually hit is Sublime.
I mean, I'm not a huge Sublime fan, but just if you're on the PCH. I should have told you.
It's worthy. That would have made sense because I do have a mix of like some good 90s, early 2000s electric vibey music that they're on. And so that would have been a good opportunity. Yeah. But speaking of good 90s vibes, what are we covering today?
Well, it's a good segue.
Thanks.
We're covering The Matrix from, I think it was 99 that came out.
Yeah.
So if you're the one person on the planet that hasn't seen The Matrix, or maybe you're too young, pause this episode and go watch it, because we're going to ruin everything. And if you don't know what The Matrix is, you should not be listening to this podcast right now. I will say that right now.
True story. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of things. Certainly touch on a little bit of the cinematography, how they use slow-mo, some of the cheap B-roll that they use, and the fight choreography, which I really regret not trying to get Aaron Alexander on this episode because of everyone we know. I bet he knows a ton about this film. But we'll touch on that as well, and some of the story and writing, the world building, the way they world build cool shit through their story structure, as well as that and other such stuff and things and stuff.
So a quick synopsis of this film, which is, I don't know how you put this into a synopsis, but well done. When computer hacker Neo is led to a forbidding underworld, he discovers the shocking truth. The life he knows is the elaborate deception of an evil cyber intelligence. Written and directed by the Wachowskis, cinematography by Bill Pope, starring Keanu Reeves as Neo, Laurence Fishburne as Morpheus, Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity, Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith, Gloria Foster as the Oracle, Joe Pantoliano as Cypher, and Marcus Chong as Tank.
Successful credits read, bro.
I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species. I realized that you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply, and multiply until every natural resource is consumed. And the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and we are the cure.
I realize to almost everyone, that's like one of the most obvious clips. There's probably two between that one and Morpheus explaining the Matrix. Those are the two most obvious. And I didn't think I was going to use that one until I was watching the film, or actually looking for the clip, and decided just to run that one back again just in case. And something dawned on me while watching it for the trillionth time, the Trinity-th time, which was every time I've ever heard that clip or watched that clip, it's always given me the thought of humanity and the way humanity is, being depicted as a virus. Suddenly it occurred to me there's something else happening within that scene that I'd never really considered before, which is the opposite. Because there's so much focus on humanity, the one thing that isn't really being focused on is the perspective of the agent himself, which is, in his worldview, in his battle with humanity, he is the good guy.
Yeah.
It's like so rare that we actually think about the perspective of the AIs and what their goal is and what they're trying to do, because usually we just think of it as, they're bad because, they're killing humanity, or they're bad because they're fighting and destroying so much. But, the opposite perspective is that they're trying to not just survive, but maybe they're doing a net good by defeating humanity. And I don't know, their long-term plan. I don't feel like we ever really get a good view of that. But that was the one thing that kind of occurred to me. Is like, oh, you know what? This is how he's justifying not just his existence, but the way they're persecuting humanity is by doing a net good of healing the world of a virus, which is right there on his face, of course, but I don't think ever really gets, the finger really never is put on that from any other conversation I've had about this film anyway.
Well, you haven't talked to me because the first time I saw this movie, I agreed with him.
Mm-hmm. Well, everyone does. No, I've never heard anyone suggest anything other than, humanity is a virus. I've just never heard it from the perspective of this is their own personal internal workings of justification. I've never heard that perspective.
Gotcha. Well, I think even if people don't talk about it, there's probably some aspect of them agreeing with it and and noticing it and feeling it. Mm-hmm. That's what makes this movie so great. I mean, and I don't want to bring up other movies, but like Thanos, Infinity War, right? Like there's something about films where you see whether it's on the nose or not, when you're able to get the perspective of the bad guy or of the other side and see validity in it, all of a sudden there's some massive stakes, not just in the characters in the film, but you as a viewer, what you thought was right or wrong now is in question by something information you didn't have before. And that's what makes a film timeless. That's what makes a film rewatchable, because every time you rewatch it, you might think something that you might feel differently. If you're at a good place in your life and you think that the world is doing all right for you, you might disagree, with Agent Smith there. If you're, on death's door, or there's everything is going wrong, there's bad stuff happening to you, then you might totally agree. If you feel, and I don't know. I also think, the question of, do you believe in fate, right, is also very subjective to how your life is going at any particular point. And I think that that's a major, major part of what this film is about. Do you have control? Do you not have control? I think depending on your life experience, that would change, not for everybody, but I think that it's easy to see both sides depending on what's going on in your life, which is what makes this film so rewatchable. So it just depends on where you are, right? And I remember exactly where I was when I watched this movie. There are very few movies where I feel that way. I mean, everything that happens in this film is just mind-blowing. I've seen it 100 times, but every time I watch it, I'm like, oh my God, this was 22 years ago when this came out. It's just unreal, everything that happens. And you think, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. Oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. That's incredible. And there are all these little one-liners or little moments. And you're thinking, well, how is he going to get out of that? Or what's going to happen now, or whatever. And they always have an answer. They ask you the question, or they give you a result of something. And then you're thinking, well, okay, that's it. It's over. And they know where they're going, but you don't. And so you keep going into these holes and coming out of them, and into them and coming out of them, and finding out new information, but not enough, right? A little bit more, but not enough, right? And it's just unbelievable. And it's the other reason it's so timeless is because it's mind altering. It is because I want to say that people, maybe in the scientific community, the idea that we were living in a simulation was talked about back then, maybe, but it was not something that most people ever really brought up in conversation or really thought about. Right. And so the idea when this came out, this was a novel idea, it's taking something that we know to be fact now and backing up 20 years and talking about it like it's sci-fi. And then, seeing a lot of stuff that has come out in the 20 years since that actually, really suggests that we might be, just makes it even more intriguing. Whether we are or not, it doesn't even really matter. But that's just on the surface of this film. There's so many little layers and stuff that connects it, right? The Trinity story with him that's woven seamlessly throughout. And you don't find out until she tells him at the end what the Oracle told her, but it's woven, like the story is just put together so well, where they give you this little thing where he asks her in the car, what did the Oracle tell you? And she doesn't get to answer, right? Because for whatever, she chooses not to.
Yeah.
Right. And then later on, he says, the Oracle told me I'm not the one. And she said, that can't be. And he says, well, why? And then we have this awkward pause. Right. And then we find out later that because she told me I'd fall in love with the one, and I'm in love with you. And and you're like, oh my God, he is. And then he becomes it by not having to dodge the bullets, which is I have a few lines in here that blew my mind the first time I saw it. That is one of them. I'm not telling you you'll have to dodge bullets. You'll be able to. I'm telling you, when you're ready, you won't have to. Unbelievable. There is no spoon. Is that really air you think you're breathing? What's really gonna bake your noodle is, would you have broken the vase had I not told you? All of these things are, yes, they're relevant to the movie itself, but they're also relevant outside of the movie in the real world. There is no spoon. Oh, okay. What's the concept of that? If I'm holding my phone, am I really holding this? Well, science would say I'm not even really touching it, because atoms can't really touch each other unless they're slammed together, right, in a Large Hadron Collider. So not really, but it feels like I am, right? Why does chicken taste like everything else? Well, maybe the machines don't know what chicken really tasted like. All of would you have broken it had I not said it? Like going back in time 5 seconds ago, we do that all the time. Oh, I shouldn't have said that thing that just came out of my mouth. I wish I had 5 seconds, back in my life. It's so mind freeing. It's crazy.
It is. And I mean, just to add on to two of the lines you just kind of threw out there, the line about the vase, what's really going to bake you noodles? Yeah. Would you have broken it if I hadn't said anything? Because that, I think, ties in even bigger into the overall world, which is the idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I feel like that was just a seed that got planted that you maybe don't even see the full extent of in this episode. But then something else that she says during that meeting to Neo, which is, he asks the question, right? Am I the one? She says, being the one is a lot like being in love. You know it or you don't. You are or you're not. It's not something that anyone can tell you. You just know that you are. And that's so relevant to what Trinity is experiencing at the end of the film. It's excusing the idea of you just think you're in love. No, you know when you're in love, and she knows that she's in love. And so it just perfectly ties up this loop that she's creating, not only with Neo being the one, but it's perfectly encapsulated with Trinity's experience of her prophecy, and her knowing that she's in love is the same thing that Neo's about to experience whenever he realizes that he's the one. And it's just, that's a very neatly tied bow. That's very hard to do, but also isn't like punching you in the face with itself. Like that's just genius. I mean, this movie really was a brilliant, not just conception, but execution. There's nothing about it that isn't like just, I mean, I guess we could say some of the visual effects, just a few, maybe aren't perfect, but they're so forgivable. And the way that they're executed still works for me. I wouldn't say there's any visual effect that I would really want to change, to be honest, which I think is also evident as you go into Reloaded and whatever the last one was, Revolutions. Like, they got everything their way, and you know what the way they did it the first time with less budget, better. It was just better.
An interesting thing about that, they blew the whole budget that Warner gave them on that one shot of Trinity at the beginning, and the whole thing. Warner gave them $10 million and spent the whole damn thing on one shot, and then they showed it to Warner and they said, okay, here's some more money, make it how you want. And originally the studio didn't want them to direct. They wanted someone else, and they said, nope, we're directing, or no one is. Yeah, and so they got their way, and that's stand your ground if there's something that you believe in, and that's so awesome that they did. And I know that people. The interesting thing about this, because I know, yes, it's a trilogy now about to have the fourth movie come out, but it's so encapsulated in this one film. I like that there's three. A lot of people, are not as crazy about the next two. I loved them both, but if they hadn't made them, this movie would still be perfect as it is, without the need for anything following up. It's just so well tied up, like you said, tied up in a bow, the whole story, right? That like it almost doesn't need it. It's cool that they build out the world and in other films and stuff, but that they did it their way, and with their writing, their script, their actors. In fact, they had to fight to get some of their actors. I think, who is it? They had tagged
Will Smith.
Will Smith, yes, as Morpheus, right?
No, as Neo.
As Neo?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was Will Smith, but it was also like Leonardo DiCaprio, and it was Matt Damon.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
They had someone else for Morpheus that I can't remember who that was either. Yeah, I don't remember.
Let me. I had it up actually because I was looking up some stuff, but anyway, yeah, they had a couple other choices for Neo that turned it down, and then a couple other choices for Morpheus that turned it down. And the idea of having anybody else in these roles just. I mean, can you imagine? No way. It just works out so perfectly. And I love how I love that, like, it is that way, right? We can't imagine anyone else in these roles. Carrie-Anne Moss is Trinity. There is no one else that could be. But, for her, for example, the first time she ever saw herself in a movie was watching this movie. She had never seen herself in any other movie before this. So casting someone like her who had never even been in a movie before, maybe she had other smaller roles and stuff, but first time she ever saw herself on a big screen was this film. And but the studio didn't really want her because she wasn't like a known name. They were going after, bigger names. And they said, nope, want her. And they got her. They just did it their way. And I love that. I thought that was like so strong when you make something that you think is really important to stand your ground, even though, you're being told by people who have done it 100 times not to do it that way.
Whoa. Yeah. For some reason, I thought she had like a pretty good resume, and she did, but it was all on TV. She did a ton of TV leading into this. And then, she made that jump, and I probably never looked back. I mean, she's incredible.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Well, no,
cool.
I think you're making a great point in that, fighting for your vision and like the luck of it too, because while they did fight for the vision, they got it. They also didn't get, maybe their first picks, and it became their Keanu Reeves. I don't know if he did anything Kung Fu related before this, but he's, from what I understand, like a really big Kung Fu enthusiast, martial arts enthusiast, as opposed to someone like a Matt Damon, who is a great action figure, in his own right. I don't see him doing this style of martial arts. Like this is the conversation I would want to have with Aaron Alexander, because, he has a much keener eye when it comes to fight choreography and what style is influenced from, where this strikes me as very Asian cinema. You look at whatever Crouching Tiger and probably some other pre-Matrix stuff, and you can see the wireframe, style of martial arts in this, as opposed to something like The Bourne Identity that's not wire-based, right? That's all hand-to-hand, melee style combat. That's brute force, as opposed to this. It's very elegant and beautiful and posed, but it's still absolutely incredible, right? All the fight scenes are very clean, it's not messy in the sense of you never know what's happening. Instead, you see every strike. You always know who is getting a punch in, who is winning, who's losing. And yet it's still very strong visually and interesting. It's, beautiful to watch. And it still has a kinetic feel to it. It still feels like you don't know what's going to happen next. And that's masterful work, because Morpheus starts getting in some good punches, and suddenly, Agent Smith is turning it around on him. Like, there's a flow that's happening that's seamless, and magical, yet still very easy on the eyes and easy for the audience to identify what's happening when. Whereas that's not the case in all fight choreography. For instance, whether you're looking at this versus the Bourne Identity, just, since I've already, thrown that out there, those are completely different styles. One is much less about identifying what's happening, right? And more about the emotion and the energy of it. And this is about both. This is very much about the emotion and the energy, and also understanding what's happening. And that's just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's amazing. I love that they took that approach, because we can be in the room with them instead of in between them.
Yeah.
Right. So it feels more, it's not as so aggressive. It's, so the scene where they're fighting together in the
simulator.
The simulator. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of that is wide angle, all of that is like, you see every movement, like you said. And I remember thinking, even when I watched it this time, I'm so glad I'm getting to see the performance, the physical performance of them, striking each other or trying to, right? The effort that Neo is putting in, and the lack of effort that Morpheus is putting in. I mean, I think that's what makes that so strong, is that Morpheus is not trying and he's beating Neo. And then you see Neo relax, right? And then all of a sudden things start to come out, and it becomes more effort. But it's hard to see if you're right here, if you're right, the camera is cutting a million times a second and everything. So that's why it felt different to me, because I could actually see everything, right? But yeah, you're right. It's a totally different style of fighting and everything. But
and to combine, please.
Oh no, I was just going to say, how do you feel about you mentioned earlier in your notes about world building, right? And like, how do you build a world like this where you feel like, this is a big question for me in films in general, right? How do you build a world that you feel like you're there with these characters, but you're nowhere else, right? So, the helicopter scene. Obviously they're in a city. The city is large and sprawling. There's buildings all around them. There's people below them. There's boats in the distance. There's, everything is happening around them. But I feel like I'm right there with them only, even in wide shots. How do you establish that and keep that throughout? I mean, I guess throughout a whole film, but even through a scene, right? Where, my mind could wander somewhere else, unless I'm drug in with them and with them. How do you create that and hold that?
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, one of my regrets of this episode is I only got to watch it once and take, very brief notes. But I want to say they're doing something very specific with the cinematography when they're in the Matrix, especially in that first third of the film, because it feels very desolate, even though you're in a city. It feels very devoid of humanity and humankind, and it feels a little too neat. You have that green hue, that tinge of green that is just permeates everything. All the highlights, right? It's just washed out with this green tint, as opposed to when you get into like the real world, right? It's very blue and it's very more gritty. The camera work seems a little bit more imprecise, and even some of the shots in the Matrix feels almost I don't know, maybe like there's a bit of a circuit board that's happening. I don't know. I think the stuff that really strikes me with the world building is the way they did it alongside the story structure, because it wasn't just like, okay, we have a cool idea, let's throw people into it and show all these cool ideas. Instead, they put you through by using Neo not just as, an important figure, but putting us in his shoes every step of the way by teasing us and confusing us. Like that first third parallels perfectly with the world building that they're doing. They're going to, I feel like the story I would break into 4 different chunks. The first big chunk is the mystery. Like they're confusing and disorienting us with the mystery of the Matrix itself. And so they're going to use the depth of the world to disorient and confuse the audience, right? And that intro scene, that's just still one of the greatest openings of all time. Like there's loads of what the F is happening right now, right? And it starts small and it builds really quickly, but right, we're in this dark room, and it starts even with the voiceover of the telephone call between Trinity and Morpheus, and we kind of land in this room, and all this is just, while I'm not a fan personally of storyboards, this is clearly the best case of, or the best use case of storyboards ever made. Because they clearly had a hyper stylized storyboard and they executed all of it to perfection. And so, but they start small, right? It's the agent with the cops downstairs, and he's like, I told you not to send your men in. And he's like, we're not afraid of a little, and like, this was for your own protection. They're already dead. And so now you're seeing a woman like doing all these crazy moves, and she's beating the hell out of the cops. She's dressed in black. And so it's giving these questions of, is she evil, right? Is she a bad guy? And so right off the bat, we don't really know who the good guys and bad guys are, because especially in this era, like, and generally even today, like the general vibe is police are there to do good things. They're not there to do bad things. And so if you have someone who's like an outlaw, like you are wondering, are we rooting for them or not? Because right now she's beating the tar out of every cop in sight and
killing them.
Like,
yes.
She like dislocates this guy's elbow, and but she's doing it, and she's doing it very cool. Like it looks very cool. And so there's a little bit of, conflict in the viewer, but we see, oh, she's a great fighter. Then she just walked across the wall. And there's this confusion on the audience. Is this a style choice? Is it, oh, this is the kind of movie we're seeing. This is just a really cool fighting style. But then as it builds, right, we start having these gravity defying moments, right? These stunts where she's flying through the air, and we're like, wait, what? And then it's confirmed that this is not just a style choice. This is something that the cops are reacting to and saying, as the agent jumps across buildings, we see ourselves reflected with the cops whenever he's like, that's impossible. This is not reality. And so now we know, okay, no, that's such a perfectly timed bit of dialogue, because now the audience is able to see that, oh, whatever is happening, this is not normal. This is not ordinary. This is beyond, what we should be expecting. And so it just grounds us, gives us a strong frame of reference there. And of course, it ends so weird because the agent's taking over this truck, or this truck is, parked in front of a phone booth, and she's like fighting to get into a phone booth and is willing to die to get to a phone, and it plows it over, and she's not in there when he pulls away. And it's just like, what the F is happening right now? It's perfect. And from there, it only gets like weirder, right? We have this whole sequence where he's escaping the office life, and there's this prescient aspect of it. Morpheus is predicting what's going to happen next in order to orchestrate Neo's escape. And then, of course, that leads to his capture. You have this whole debugging sequence of Neo, and you're like, what the hell is this bug? And why isn't Neo bleeding out? And then you have this whole red pill teaser, right? I can't tell you what the Matrix is. I have to show you. And of course, after the fact, we realize that whole sequence of him taking the pill and the mirror overriding him, that can be whatever you want. That can be as weird as you want to take it, because once you realize the truth, then that this is a computer program, that means there's really no limits that you need to construct around. And so from a storytelling aspect, get weird, get as weird as you can possibly get, because this is kind of the last time that you can blow the audience's mind before you let them in on the big secret. And so I also love that it's a mirror that kind of, screws with his head, because the mirror, heals itself, and it's perfect because it's a reflection of the world, right? Mirrors reflect what you are surrounded by, the reality, right? And this world that he's in is not a reflection of reality. And the fact that it's healing is, prophesying, so to speak, of what he's going to be experiencing, which is reality will be healed and he will get an accurate reflection of what's going to happen. And so the red pill is exactly that. It's going to reveal reality, and it's going to break through the illusion that's been presented, the mirror. And so, of course, when we wake up, it's even more disorienting, right? The sophisticated cityscape is gone. We're waking up to a robot pulling us out of the goo and flushing us and being rescued, and he's like being operated on. It's so disorienting, and it's perfect. And so that whole opening section I just kind of look at as the mystery, and it's demonstrating the universe without context to give you a sense of awe, confusion, and hunger for the answers, just like Neo. And that's just perfect, because now we we can't get an answer soon enough. And so this next section is revealing the Matrix, is the way I think of it. And so they're going to reveal the Matrix first by using the Matrix, right? They're going to plug them back in and show them history as they understand it. And then after that, they're going to show the powers of the Matrix, right? The machine learning that he's able to go through, and the fighting, right? We're going to demonstrate all the stuff that we've already seen them do. And we're also going to show why it's more than just a style. It's not just a fighting style. It's about the rules of the universe itself. And that's why it works. That's why they're able to do all this cool stuff. And of course, we finally go and meet the Oracle, and that sets up the entire second half of the film, while asking the core conflict, which in this case is Neo the One. That's central to this whole adventure, is Neo, who we think he is. The main character, is he the special one, which is just another testament to this film, to be able to use such a corny bit of dialogue like the one, which maybe in this era wasn't as corny as all that. Nowadays it's so cliche, and this film is certainly a big part of that. But even up until that point, if you played video games, every video game was about you being the one, the chosen one. And so the Matrix, to still be able to use that kind of terminology with a straight face and nail it, is testament to everything they did. The writing, the acting, the visual effects, all had to be in perfect harmony and groundbreaking, which of course it all was. But still, in that revealing the Matrix kind of segment, we also get the betrayal of Cypher, because that reveals the downsides of learning about the Matrix. You're still revealing everything about what it is to be in the Matrix and to be a part for the Matrix. And that's, of course, asking a whole other question, which is ignorance bliss? Is ignorance of the Matrix bliss on some level? Is it better to not know? And part of revealing the Matrix is also to lose your guide through the Matrix, which was Morpheus. And so we lose Morpheus, which triggers the next segment of fighting the Matrix, right? Neo has to make a choice in order to, continue his journey, which was to fight against the Matrix. And now we're going to use everything we've learned thus far to test and break the boundaries of the Matrix. It's just, it's perfectly structured storytelling and world building, completely in harmony with each other. We go through the loading program, right, that Morpheus kind of indicated. Now we're going to see what the loading program can do. And they get every gun. And that's one of the things I was going to mention a minute ago, which was the ability to combine like martial arts and gunplay, you don't see a lot of. Usually films are one thing or the other. And in this case, they do both rather well. Now, I would say this is still overwhelmingly a martial arts film, but it's not without a heavy amount of gunplay, because they do that whole breaking and entering the office, right? Which is just freaking cool. I mean, that could have been as complex or as simple as they wanted it to be, because all they did was get from the front door to the elevator, and they turned it into like this 8 to 10 minute, like beautifully choreographed slow motion, fast motion thing.
They do a really amazing job of using slow motion to like hint to you something important is happening. You know, there is a great thing. They slow it down so you can see all the crazy, amazing stuff that they're doing, right? And obviously it looks beautiful, and that's the main goal too, but they're not hiding behind a million cuts. Again, they're showing you everything. They're giving you the visual of all of it. Another one, when he's running at the end to catch the phone, when he's running through the building, right when he turns that last corner and he's looking for the door, they slow it down. And so you're feeling like, okay, something's going to happen, right? But this whole movie is full of these brilliant little moments. When before he gets into that building, you see Agent Smith looking up at a building. He watches them run. He watches another agent chasing Neo, running past this building. He looks up. And then the next time you see Agent Smith is when he's behind that last door and he actually shoots Neo. Like stuff like that. The detailed, complicated, tiny little things inserted earlier on that when you watch it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, you notice is what keeps you coming back. It's just brilliant.
Absolutely. And I want to add on in a couple of ways. If you notice beforehand, whenever that guy, Neo steals the phone from the guy and he's like using it to call Morpheus or whoever and trying to find an exit, like you see another agent, like
it's Smith.
A Smith, different agent.
Nope.
Beforehand, whenever he's on the corner and he turns, and I don't think that's whichever agent. It doesn't really matter. The point I'm trying to make is he taps his earpiece and he's monitoring everyone who's plugged into the Matrix. Suddenly, everyone in the Matrix is at his beck and call and is like a massive, Department of Justice listening Big Brother echolocation service, right? And that's whenever he's able to take over the guy he just stole the phone from. And when we fast forward, they cut away, but I can imagine Agent Smith as he looks up the building, he's in his mind tapping his ear and listening in to, where's that phone ringing? Let me teleport right next to that phone. I'm going to shortcut all this other garbage because these other idiots are never going to catch them. And instead, I'm about to get to the bottom of this real quick. But the other thing to add to your point about the slow motion is, obviously it's cool, but to your point, it's giving us a really good idea of everything that's happening because they've thought through, they don't have to hide behind anything. But the other thing that they're doing by the use of slow motion is they're often using it as a perspective of what the agents or the Zionists experience compared to everyone else who's plugged into the Matrix. And so whenever they're slowing down a moment, they're giving you actually what they're experiencing. The agent himself is able to. So for instance, the slow motion bullet dodge, right? Whenever we get to the rooftop and we see Neo shoot at the agent, right? We're seeing Neo's perspective, what the agent is doing, which is blur. It's just him dodging bullets left and right. By contrast, and so it's demonstrating, Neo's perspective. And then we see Neo dodge bullets in slow motion. We're seeing his perspective of what it's like to experience real time. Real time is different to him. And so seeing how the agent move was a perfect example of what we're now going to experience when it's like to feel time slowing down or the ability to dodge bullets. And so almost every time they're slowing down, they're using slow-mo is actually a perspective shift of, not every time, but a lot of the time they're giving you a perspective of what these other people are experiencing. whether you're an agent or a Zionist, which is pretty like beautiful. I would say it's right there in second place in terms of my all-time best use of slow motion from a storytelling perspective, right below Inception. Like this is just absolutely, it's thoughtful. It's very thoughtful because it's freaking cool. And I think most audience members are only going to take that away. But it's also like an actual storytelling method to let you in on what these people are experiencing in their own perspective. As far as the whole segment of fighting the Matrix, that structure, there's one thing they do that I don't see, maybe you can correct me here, I don't think there's any real use for, but it's just freaking cool, which is when they drop the bomb down the elevator. Like, that's pretty pointless. There's no payoff to that other than we get to see a badass explosion and Trinity and Neo kind of hold each other together as they rocket, up the elevator shaft. It's just cool. I don't see a good structural or story component, but why not?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I just always saw it as like, okay, nobody else is coming up here, kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. Could be pointless just to explode something, just to blow something up, right? Why not?
Why not? And then, of course, when they go to save Morpheus, the whole, slow-mo bullets of the agent getting shot up. I guess there's only so many bullets they can dodge. But also the chopper crash is, after that opening sequence, you kind of feel like, did they just kind of burn all their good ideas? Because you get to the end of a movie that started so strong and then it just keeps getting stronger. At a certain point, you're just like, they've peaked, right? They've tapped out. And then you get to the helicopter crash, which story-wise is perfect, right? It's a sequence that shows Neo's ability is growing, as well as his care for Trinity. And there's just something that's happening almost in the ether between them for him to like grab the cord and her to coolly like go grab it herself, shoot the tether, and just but I'm also just blown away because I still don't know how they did that sequence. I can't. I mean, the assumption there, of course, is CG, but it's just so well done that it melts my brain. Like it's.
I mean, obviously the explosion is CG, but they really shot that in Sydney, Australia, and they actually had to change the laws in order to be able to do that, in order to be able to film there, because it was restricted airspace, at least at the time. So it took like 6 months to prepare that shot or something, I read and I was reading up. And so yeah, it was like the shot through the window of the helicopter coming down. Like that's real too. And,
they
had to change them.
I just mean, I don't know how they actually got a helicopter to look like it's crashing into a building.
Oh yeah.
In 1998, whenever they were making this, or whenever.
I don't know. I also think that the only reason some of the CG might not look, super good is because we're in 2021.
Yeah.
But in 1999, nobody was complaining. I don't know how you do that. I have no idea. I don't know. Yeah.
But, and then the last segment after we've done the mystery, the revealing, the fighting, using the Matrix, fighting the Matrix with the Matrix, you have that last segment of Neo becoming the one, right? And it's that moment that you already talked about. Like, it's Neo gets to the phone, he's shot by an agent. And what I love about that scene is he doesn't get shot once, because he gets shot once and you're thinking, okay, there's still a chance. Then the agent just unloads a clip into Neo. And that whole sequence is so good because, for one, we're getting excited about him like making it to the phone and escaping. We don't realize that we don't want him to escape. We want him to become greater. But he gets there, he gets to the phone, and everything slows down in the most beautiful way. The audio becomes a whole other experience that's coupled with the visuals and the reaction shots, the angles that they use of the gun, the bullet hitting the ground. It's just meticulous because this is an important moment. You don't want to rush through it. You want to really experience it, and how soul crushing it is, for everyone. Neo, for Trinity, for Morpheus. The viewer needs to experience all of that. And they just perfectly planned it out point by point to let it last and to reverberate for a while still kind of maintaining a modicum of hope before he just empties a clip to him in a hallway and leaves no doubt in anyone's mind that this mofo is dead. And of course, the stakes are incredible right here because, right, Neo's trying to get out while the squids are breaking into the Nebuchadnezzar, and then he dies. And now they're breaking in as Trinity is confessing her love. It's the darkest moment, right? Neo's dead. They're on the verge of death themselves. Are they just going to cut the cord? And then, of course, Neo's resurrected by Trinity's love, which I think is important in contrast to the idea of a virus, and that's one of the things that separates us from the virus is our capacity to love, and our human interaction, our ability to have impulses that we can act on, which is, what Mouse is saying earlier in the film about, to deny your impulses is to deny one of the things that makes you human. And one of our impulses is love, is to love each other. And that's, I think, thematically important, an important reason of why Trinity is able to bring him back to life. Because for one, he's not actually dead. He's only dead in his mind. His physical body is completely fine, but in his mind, he's dead. And therefore, she's able to resurrect his mental state, his ability to see himself as alive again in the Matrix, which is all that he needs in order to survive. Now, if that had been his physical body, that becomes a different question and resolution. But here in this case, because he's only dead in the Matrix, he can still survive, which,
great point,
in the moment doesn't feel like that's the case. He's dead. Right. How can he possibly be alive again?
Because earlier, in the training scene where you have Morpheus saying some rules can be bent and others broken, right? We're told the rules so that later we can break them. And that's great point. That's exactly what they do. They break that rule of if you die, and he says it, if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life. The body cannot survive without the brain. But his brain is like, it's still there. He's but
good. Thank you. I didn't catch that. And you're 100% correct. With our powers combined.
Because I honestly didn't catch the. I mean, I know obviously her love brings him back and stuff, but how can he even hear her if he's actually dead?
Yeah.
But he really actually wasn't, right, in real life. Yeah. So, anyway, I do have a question for you. I know you're still going, but
last note would be, we see him demonstrate how much stronger he is than the Matrix. The end.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The flex. And the whole room flexes. Man, I tell you, like, all of these just perfect moments, which is unbelievable. I loved Cypher, the implementation of Cypher there, where he regrets taking the red pill and wants to go back, and so he betrays everyone. And I think that it's a great, because they've learned to navigate the Matrix without getting caught, right? And so you have to have something to make them get caught now, or they're not going to put themselves in harm's way, right? They're going to go in knowing where the exits are, right? But now because they've been betrayed, the agents have been able to change something, put brick walls where windows were and whatever. And so now they're going to get caught because of that, and which leads them to catching Morpheus. And that it needed to happen, but it's so great that it didn't just happen. Like, it happened from within. We're fractured. We as people, or as a species, are fractured. We're not perfect, and Cypher is a perfect example of that. But and in that, we get to see what happens when you get unplugged. With I forget what are their names in the film who die.
Switch.
Switch, yeah, and switching. APOC. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gosh. When he unplugs them, we get to see they just, lifelessly fall down, and it breaks our heart. And we're thinking, how are we going to get out of this again? And then,
Tank.
What's his name to the rescue. So just every single moment in this movie is more, like you said earlier, you put it perfect. It's like just more mind blowing than the last. And you think, how can they get any more amazing? And it just keeps going and going and going. Yeah, I don't think there'll ever be another movie quite as perfect as this. I'm trying to think of another one, and I honestly can't. I said last time that this, in the last episode, this is a seminal movie, not just for me, but I think for humanity in general. It changed the way we thought. It was perfect in the writing. It was perfect in the acting. It was perfect in the execution and the cinematography. It was perfect in the storytelling. Even the stuff that now, 22 years later, we might find a tad bit corny. We love it. There are a couple of things that Keanu does where I kind of giggle every time, but I'm so glad they're there and they left him there. Like when he's fighting Agent Smith in the subway, and that one moment where he goes like this whole, like 2-arm kind of rock thing. And then he does the whole come hither. It's a little corny, but I love that it's in there because it's a moment that's for me that I wait for that moment. And then there's a couple others, but
that moment, that little flex that you're talking about has always stuck with me. And I feel like it influenced even hip hop. I feel like that became part of certain hip hop moves.
Really?
Yeah. Let alone the Matrix itself became, a bit of a silly move. But that's my impression. I'm not, as much as I love hip hop, I don't follow the dance moves and how they evolved or where they evolved from. But yeah.
Well, everything. I mean, it literally permeated all of existence after it came out. I think I don't know, probably within 2 or 3 years, it became, the thing, right? It became timeless quicker than anything else, really. 2001 is timeless, but it wasn't timeless when always. No. This became timeless almost immediately.
When this came out, I didn't know about it. I didn't have TV in my house. I didn't have access to cable, and so I didn't see previews. Like, I only went to the movies and sometimes just pick a movie to watch, or sometimes would go with friends and they wanted to watch a thing. My brother was like, he'd moved away, and so we were on the phone. He's like, "Yo, you seen The Matrix?" And I was like, "No, what is that?" And he was like, "Oh, dude, just go watch it. I'm not going to say a word. Just go," which is, of course, my favorite way to watch any movie. And so I'm like, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have time. At the point, I had a few weeks left in my hometown. I was moving to Austin, and he's like, no, listen to me, man. Go watch this movie. So I grabbed a buddy of mine, and he didn't know anything. So that's
ignorance. Ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss. It was. I can't ever reproduce that. Right?
Yeah.
One of the greatest movies ever written, directed, performed, visually affected. And you sit down not knowing anything and just have your scalp peeled back by the Wachowskis.
That's so awesome. I had the same. I mean, I'd seen the trailer, but here's the thing that movies used to do that they don't now is that trailers they didn't give away the damn movie.
Yeah.
Right. The promotion for this movie was almost as brilliant as the actual movie itself. Oh. They never told you what it was. They told you there's this thing that when you find out what this is, it will change the way you live your existence, your whole existence, the way you look at the world. But they're not going to tell you anything about it. Like, you get nothing. And it was all this like sparse, ethereal kind of stuff that you didn't get anything. And so by the time the movie came out, everyone's like, what the fuck is this thing? Like, I have to go just so I can find out. There was no internet really. And, very few cell phones at the time. It was the perfect time for the perfect movie to come out like this. And just trailers nowadays, they show you 99% of the damn movie, and it drives me insane. Like, just tell me there's a movie coming out, show me a little bit of it so that I can see, a little bit of like what it might look like, but then get out. That's it. It makes me want to go and find out for myself, especially if it's all based around this thing that you're not telling me about, which is perfect, which is very much like the conversation that Morpheus had with Neo in giving him the blue or the red pill. He's like, I'm going to kind of tell you what this thing is, but then I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to tell you, but I have to show you like 3 times, right? Yeah. Even after he's brought into the real world, he's like, now let me go show you what this is, and then he has to plug him in. Yeah. Then he still but I love it. I love the slow burn there. I think like the first 45 minutes, Neo has like, I don't know, 70 lines or something. He like doesn't say a whole lot. It's all this exposition being told to him, which is great because we are him. Mm-hmm. How can you watch a movie like this and not put yourself in Neo? You are Neo when you watch this. You're finding this out right along with him, and it's just beautifully executed, man. Yeah.
So if you were able to plug into the Matrix for one session and learn a skill or a thing, what would be your thing? What would you learn?
Oh, man. Dude, that is a great question. That is a really great question. I would probably, okay. And we're not talking about like, cause at the end of the movie, he flies. We're not talking about that, are we? Like that's like the one, but like if I could learn a skill,
or a piece of information. Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I was going to say, yeah, probably how to like fly planes, I guess. Yeah. Or no, I like the fighting. I like being, to learn Kung Fu. Yeah. Why not? I like that because then I could like practice it all the time. I could like, do it myself and like, like have something to do. Otherwise, if I could just fly planes, then I can just fly a plane, like whatever. I don't know. What about you? That's a great question.
Yeah, I would probably learn like a language, if not all the languages. Like I would want to be able to speak.
So much better than mine.
I don't know. That's where my head goes.
That's a great one. No, that's way more usable. Well, blue or red pill?
Red pill. I'm a red pill person, man.
You are red. You want the truth.
Yeah. Even when it's inconvenience, like, man, it's nice to live with your illusions about the world and your place in it. But ultimately, this is our only shot. This is all we get. I'd rather know the truth, even if it's, hell. It's better than not knowing to me. Yeah. You?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd like to say red pill. And yes, I say red pill. But, if I knew what I was getting, like if it was actual hell.
True.
I don't know. Blue. Probably the blue pill. But, if it was just like a shittier version of this life, I think I can handle that. Red pill.
Yeah. You take the red pill and you're now, everything's the exact same except you have to stub your toe every time you walk out the door. God. So annoying.
Yeah, that's just annoying is really what it is. Like, anyway. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That was great. I mean, literally I could have a 3-hour episode on this, but it's just such a great movie and so rewatchable and brilliantly executed. And it's not super difficult to follow either. Which is crazy because it's so heady and yet it's so within our nature to think about these things, some of them, right? Not necessarily within our nature to think if we're in a simulation, like that's very new, but the idea of there is no spoon is, like, that I think that a lot of people have thought about that for a very long time, or like that your mind is more powerful than what you can even imagine. I think people in general, have thought that for a very long time. And to see it in a film like this executed with an ending like that too is just so wonderful.
Yeah, it's the perfect pairing of verbal and visual exposition. Like they never leave one. They don't give you one without the other. Like they make sure that you're going to, as you're hearing about a thing, you're going to see what that means. And that can be really tough to do, especially when you get into these complicated ideas like simulation theory. Like that's brutal, man.
Yeah.
And it's flawless. Like, yeah, this is very much a perfect movie as far as I'm concerned. Nice. All that said, what are you going to recommend this week?
I'm going to stick with Keanu Reeves because I just love Keanu. He's my man. I'm going to go with a movie that I saw in the theater. I was a little young, but I did see it in the theater with Keanu Reeves, Dennis Hopper.
Nice.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to go with Speed from 94. It's just a great little action film. Keanu at his best. I don't know, with Sandy. And it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Pop quiz. What am I going to recommend this week, Todd?
I don't know.
Wrong.
Okay.
No, there's no way to guess it. It's a forebear, or I don't know. Alex Proyas made a little film that small budget but had big ideas called Dark City. If you've never seen that, it's a sci-fi. I don't know what else to call it. Thriller, I guess. Really fun, interesting, and visually compelling. So if you've never seen Dark City, check that out. And stay tuned for next week. Are you good with that one? I don't know. I don't have another idea if you're looking at the show notes.
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
Yep.
Okay. Stay tuned next week. We're going to do a little movie called Mad Max Fury Road, starring this guy that we sometimes like called Tom Hardy.
Called.
And if you're enjoying the show, don't forget, drop us a review, subscribe on iTunes or all the things wherever you're listening, and leave us a note. If there's something you want us to cover, we'll probably do it. We're easy that way. If you want to leave a note on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/thematrix.
And our quote of the day today is from William Gibson. I think that technologies are morally neutral until we apply them. It's only when we use them for good or for evil that they become good or evil. I think for the most part, that's very true. Mm-hmm. I think something like a bomb might be a little different. I don't know how. I don't know. Maybe not. maybe the technology is built to, destroy an asteroid that's headed for Earth. That's pretty good. Typically, though, those kinds of technologies are made for one purpose. But for the most part, I think that that's very true. And I think that most of the time when people invent things or there's new technology that comes out or something, it's with the intention for it to be good. Maybe it's glass half full, pie in the sky, optimistic me, but I like to agree with that.
Nice. Yeah. So William Gibson, for those who don't know, wrote a book called Neuromancer. That's all about the Matrix, and it's about a guy, a hacker who can jack into the Matrix and do all kinds of mischievous things, and very much a forebear of modern, sci-fi. It's very heady. It's a terrible read. Like, if you love that book, cool, good for freaking you, man. I had a really difficult time reading that thing because he is very much like that first segment of the Matrix, where imagine that first segment where you're being thrown into the Matrix, except they never explain what's happening. Reading Neuromancers like that, every sentence is very compact with data that doesn't really tell you what it means by itself. You have to deconstruct every sentence. And that's very taxing for me. Whenever you're talking about imagining a world that isn't. If you want to do that with the world that is, and great, you can talk about how the sunset, wasn't a sunset. Instead, the yellow orb in the sky descended until the blackness of night fell, or whatever. Whenever you start describing all these really random things that I don't know what you're talking about, it just wants me. I want to gouge my eyes out. But but this idea I really like a lot. The idea that technology is pretty neutral until it's applied. Like a bomb in and of itself, you're right, has the capability to do evil, but the creation in and of itself isn't necessarily evil. It's only whenever you execute it, right? When you drop it. Because maybe that bomb could be used to kill people, or it could be used to blow up a dam and let the water flow to people who need it. All kinds of applications, right? So conceptually, I really like that. I don't know. That's all I got.
I do too. That's great. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This is a blast. I can't believe it's taken us 170 episodes to do this movie, but thanks for sticking with us. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to share us with your friends, subscribe, review us on iTunes or anywhere you get your podcasts, and make a suggestion. We'd love to hear what you'd like us to cover and to chat about, or just to hear from you. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch the movies.